The rain was relentless that night, drumming against the roof of my old sedan like a warning I didn't understand. I could feel my heart hammering in my chest, an inexplicable tension winding tight in my stomach as I drove down the dimly lit streets of Cedarville, Ohio. My friend Mark had called me just an hour earlier, voice trembling, and asked me to check on his mom. She's not been herself, he had whispered. Can you stay with her tonight? I didn't hesitate. Mark and I had been friends since high school, and if he was asking me this, it meant things were serious. But nothing could have prepared me for the moment I stepped through that front door. The house smelled faintly of mothballs and damp wood, the kind of smell that lingers in old homes, carrying whispers of decades past. The lights were low, casting long, dancing shadows across the walls. And there she was, Margaret, Mark's mother, a fragile figure slouched in the living room armchair, her gray hair a wild halo in the dim light. She looked far older than her 67 years, eyes wide and fearful, as though the shadows themselves threatened her. The instant she saw me, her lips trembled, and she whispered, almost hoarsely, "Please, don't leave me alone tonight." I froze. There was a raw vulnerability in that request that pierced me deeper than I expected. Here was a woman, once full of life, now clinging to the simplest human presence for comfort. My throat tightened, and I instinctively moved closer, placing a gentle hand over hers. In that quiet moment, the storm outside felt insignificant compared to the storm I could see raging in her eyes. If there was ever a time to stay, it was now. Before I could even settle into a chair, the first signs of her struggle began. Her breathing was uneven, shallow and rapid. Every creak of the old house, the radiator hissing, the floorboards groaning, seemed to make her flinch. She had lived alone since Mark's father passed years ago, and I could see how the loneliness had slowly taken its toll. It was subtle at first, but the despair in her posture, the trembling of her hands, and the occasional distant look in her eyes told me she was scared, deeply and completely. I stayed by her side, talking softly, telling her stories from Mark's childhood, laughing lightly at little memories she shared. At first, her eyes didn't even meet mine. They flicked to the corners of the room, as though expecting something terrible to leap out. But gradually, as the rain continued to lash against the windows, I saw her shoulders relax ever so slightly, her fingers loosening around the worn blanket draped over her lap. The sound of genuine laughter, faint but real, began to fill the room, a fragile melody that somehow seemed to push back the darkness. Hours passed, and the storm outside intensified. The wind rattled the windows, and lightning occasionally illuminated the living room in stark white bursts. Margaret's whispers returned sporadically, small fragments of fear spilling out. "Did you hear that? What if he comes back?" Each time I reminded her she was safe. I held her hand, stroked her hair, and whispered reassurances. She clung to every word, her small nods and soft murmurs showing that even in the grip of fear she wanted to believe in safety, in kindness, in the warmth of human presence. It was nearly midnight when she suddenly began to cry, quiet sobs at first, then deeper, more desperate. She told me about Mark's father, about losing him too soon, about the nights she spent alone, wishing for a family that felt like a memory instead of a present reality. Her voice cracked, and tears streamed down her face, soaking the blanket I held for her. I wanted to tell her it would all be okay, but I knew that sometimes words alone aren't enough. Sometimes it's simply being there, refusing to leave, letting another human soul know they are not forgotten. And so I stayed. Hours melted into a fragile silence. Margaret eventually curled up in the chair, exhausted but calm, my presence providing the anchor she so desperately needed. I could feel the weight of her loneliness, but also a faint glimmering hope, the kind that arrives quietly, like a candle flickering in the wind. That night, I realized that kindness isn't always grand gestures. Sometimes it's just holding someone's hand, staying with them when the world feels like it's falling apart. The next morning, the storm had passed. Sunlight poured through the windows, warm and soft, brushing against the wooden floor, and Margaret was awake, her eyes brighter, her posture a little less tense. She looked at me, a small, tentative smile playing across her lips. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice stronger than the night before. I don't know what I would have done without you." In that moment, I understood the true power of human connection. Mark's mom had asked me to stay, and by staying, I had not only kept her safe through the night but had reminded her that she was not invisible, that she was not alone. It was a lesson I would carry forever, that sometimes showing up for someone is the greatest gift you can offer. Mark came home later that morning, worry etched across his face, which softened into gratitude as he saw his mother smiling. We shared a quiet moment, the kind that words can barely capture, before he pulled me into a firm hug. "I can't thank you enough," he said simply, his voice thick with emotion. I shook my head, smiling softly. "Sometimes," I replied, "all it takes is just being there." If this story has already touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Every act of kindness deserves recognition, and every viewer can help spread hope and compassion. That night, and in the days that followed, I continued to check on Margaret. Our bond grew, slowly but undeniably. She shared stories about her youth, about love and loss, about Mark's father and the life they had built together. I listened, learning not just about her, but about resilience, about the strength found in simply enduring, and about the profound effect of someone willing to stand by you when you feel most fragile. Sometimes when the weight of loneliness threatens to crush you, all you need is one person to stay. Margaret's whispered plea had been simple: "Please don't leave me alone tonight." But in answering it, in offering the gift of presence and patience, I found something far greater than fear or sadness. I found a connection, an unspoken promise of human empathy, and the understanding that even the smallest acts of compassion can create ripples stronger than we imagine. As I left Margaret's house that morning, the sun reflecting off the wet streets of Cedarville, I realized that our lives are often defined not by monumental events, but by these quiet, intimate moments of care. One night, one conversation, one choice to stay, these can alter the course of a life. And in Margaret's eyes, I saw gratitude, relief, and a tiny spark of hope that might just light her way forward. Before you go, I'd love for you to leave a comment and tell me what kindness you've shown someone recently. Your story could inspire someone else to stay, to listen, to care. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of the fragile beauty of human connection, please engage with this video, like, share, and subscribe. Help spread the message that even in the darkest nights, one act of presence can be enough to bring light.